I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought at night just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Or, here we are.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. As you can see, we are completely prepared and ready to roll tonight. Thank you for joining us at Happy Jacks RPG Podcast, Season 33, Episode 4. I'm Nick.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Rose.
Excellent. So, Kimmy may or may not be joining us tonight. We will see what happens in the fullness of time. But in today's episode, these three hosts are going to recap their most memorable game or game systems of 2023. Spillmeister Thomas from Denmark is going to share how they successfully made an RPG program. And Verk from DC asks how ridiculous of an idea we will allow in a game. Yeah. Boneshaw. If you'd like to contribute a question or story to the show, please email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. There's no dot in the earlier parts. Please remember everyone, we have game days coming up on Saturday, January 13th. If you sign up, that will be wonderful. We love to have participation with all players, both those of us who are here behind the camera and those of us who are out there listening/watching us. Our next episode will be recorded on Friday, since Sunday is New Year's Eve, so you will see us again here in 1 week if you're watching today. I'd also like to go ahead and shout out our Indie Designer of the Month, which is Kurt Potts. You can find him at kurtpotts.itch.io and at Kurt Potts on the Twitter, I assume.
I think
Twitter? Instagram, something.
Yeah, I think that's
something that uses the @ sign.
Twitter
You'll be able
X,
to find him there.
whatever.
And it looks like this week we are covering a game that's called What's So Cool About the Uplift? And the Uplift is all capitalized. It is a hack of Jared Sinclair's What's So Cool About Space. And the Uplift is a tabletop RPG about cybernetically uplifted animal heroes saving the galaxy with superpowers. Think Guardians of the Galaxy, but you're all playing Rocket.
Awesome.
I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
It's a non-depressing version of We 3.
Yeah.
You awaken to find you are both less and more. You are both old and new. Through your adventures, you may get the chance to learn why this was done to you, but then it may not matter anymore. You're a hero and the galaxy needs saving.
Yeah.
It's an 11-page PDF designed to look great on a phone, which is actually really nice for travel.
Mm-hmm.
Any of you who are traveling this holiday, if you happen to be listening to us right now, check it out. Maybe it'll be a fun thing to play with the kids in the car or something of that nature, or for your friends in the car. It's a game for 3 to 6 players, including a GM. It is fun and simple rules, and it is $2.99 at kurtpotts.itch.io. So go ahead and check it out. If I had known about this ahead of time, I would have checked it out myself and been able to say something about it. I don't have any personal experience. Do either of you?
Not yet.
I have not yet.
That's a great deal.
Okay.
I'm interested.
Yeah, I will pick this up just because I will be seeing my family not super soon, but my 2 nephews are both RPG players. My sister has raised them right, so
Yeah.
this might be right up their alley.
Good work.
All right. So we don't have exactly a male. We only have 2 males this episode, but that is by design. Because
2 males and a rose.
Right.
Perfect.
No notes. 2 emails.
Oh, electronic mail.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
That's
Beep, boop.
Yes, Jason knows all about being electronic mail.
Yeah.
For further information, check out Insert Coin.
Yes, that was fun.
But instead, we're going to take a moment for all of us to talk about the games we've played this year and our favorites and why we liked them and where we are. So I'm going to invoke the producer's prerogative and not go first.
Not it.
Oh gosh, okay, that's me. Thank you, latency, for making me lose at nose goes. Yeah, let me pull up who the actual author of this is real quick.
I'm desperately racking my brain to remember all the things that just flew out of my mind the moment I was asked to speak about them.
Yes.
Yeah, so the game I'm going to talk about is called Hilt and Blade. Also stylistically done as hilt/blade.
Oh, not like a blade that you would get at the Hilton.
No, not Hilton Blade.
Okay.
Hilton
Although,
Blade is
hold on.
Yeah.
OC,
TM,
do not steal, do not steal.
Alternatively, it's an action film starring Paris Hilton wielding a katana.
You know what? I would watch
Okay,
it.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, she was good enough in Repo the Genetic Opera. I would watch it.
Yeah.
I would watch it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so Hilton Blade is a no dice, no masters role-playing game, which is the mechanical half of Belonging Outside Belonging, which was what game is that? What is it? It's a post-apocalyptic game. It's really cool, GM-less, dice-less. I will think of it when it's no longer relevant to the conversation, as this always happens. Basically, it is, what if you took Belonging Outside Belonging mechanics, which is the no dice, no masters side of things, and applied that to Neon Genesis Evangelion?
Oh,
Okay.
that's wild.
Yup. Which, for anyone who has followed along on the Discord, I had a real journey with Neon Genesis Evangelion earlier this year. I accidentally came up with the plot for Neon Genesis Evangelion while playing a different game before I had watched the show. And my friend was
Amazing.
like, "Oh, so you're a huge Evangelion fan, right?" I was like,
A what?
I'm sorry, a what? I don't know what those words mean.
That's great.
Yeah. So I went on, I think I ended up with somewhere around 30 mecha RPGs to try and like find the right feel for Evangelion, because I liked Evangelion, but I had a lot of problems with Evangelion, and I wanted to like make a game that kind of let me address those issues I had. And I looked through a bunch of different things, never really found anything. I went, well, Hilton Blade's a little bit too on the nose. It is basically just the plot of Evangelion, but it works really good. The no dice, no masters system it also has a PBTA version. So if you want a version with a GM, you can flip it around and do it that way. I have yet to test it out yet. Lloyd, the GM for Heaven on High, has spoken very, very highly of it. So I am also tempted to try that out. But it is a fantastic system. The combination of like weak and strong moves, where you can basically put your character into difficult situations or have them experience hardship, so you can get tokens which you can then spend to do cool actiony things, or like have strong character moments later in the story, is a really cool balance. I had a fantastic time playing it with Captain Kurt, with Steffi, and Verk back for VerCon earlier this year. It was fantastic. I got to play a genetically engineered super soldier named Sarah, who knew everything about piloting a mech and nothing about being a person. And she, for anyone who's seen Evangelion, she looked normal until she moved, at which point she moved like Eva 1 when it went feral, which was just a delight to play. I love playing my terrifying monster pilot. I hope to get back to that system someday.
So
yeah,
I'm not familiar with the system. It works like just storytelling, and you can. Does it just work like you put yourself in bad situations so you can get tokens to do cool stuff later, or?
Yeah. So certain, it is when you do this with your character, gain a token, and to do this with your character, spend a token. So like to successfully attack like the imminent threat, which is like the angels from Evangelion or your kaiju or whatever that is, it's kind of up for whatever you want to do with it. to successfully attack it, you need to spend tokens, and to make sure you have tokens, you have to have things where your character like is emotionally vulnerable or gives in to poor impulses or gets hurt in the battle or things like that. It's a really interesting, really intricate game design. It's something that I honestly it reminds me when I played Masks for the first time, where I was like, this is a completely different style of game design than I had been exposed to, because I'd never really played a PBTA game before Masks. And this kind of like, oh wow, I can do completely different things. The stakes are different. The types of stories I can tell are different than like anything to do with like a D20. It's really, really neat. And I am trying to find who on earth that original game was. Let me, if somebody else can vamp for me, I will find where the belonging outside belonging system.
One thing I want to
started.
add while she's looking for that is so it may not be obvious. Rose is with us by remote and is here virtually, and that means in reality there's no physical body to my right, and so sometimes I end up doing this, and it may make it seem like Rose and I are somewhat closer than we are. Also, I'm about twice your size, which is fantastic.
As a remarkably tall woman, I'm very happy with just being shrunk down
and
via
I
Zoom.
genuinely like the idea of being a giant. I wish I was as tall as Nick. I'm not. So I will just be a big guy not invading your space.
Jason, you have my consent to invade my space.
Okay.
It is allowed.
Very good. Very good.
You know what I do like about it though is that it's very, and I know this is dear to your heart, but it's like seems very Shadowrun to me.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
We've got real people, we've got virtual people.
Yeah, that our virtual selves are just merging.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
I have come up with a couple of things to talk about, but I am genuinely, all I could think is like, I know I play a game on Sundays. But
all right, to bring it back around,
good.
The belonging outside belonging system is made by Avery Alder from Buried Without Ceremony.
Yeah.
And they have made a bunch of really, really cool games. Belonging Outside Belonging is specifically for marginalized communities, LGBTQ, racial minorities, things like that. The flip side of so they made Dream Askew, which is about a post-apocalyptic queer commune, and then it is published as a part of a two-system book, the other which is Dream Apart, which is about Jewish fantasy of the shtetl. So it is a kind of supernatural goings on in a Jewish community. It's really, really cool. To add more complexity to, okay, so these two games are Belonging Outside Belonging. The pure mechanical aspect of these games is just called No Dice, No Masters, which is what Hilt and Blade is, because you are playing mech pilots rather than a marginalized community. It is just going off of the mechanical aspects of it, and doesn't really tackle the things of identity and kind of place in society that the other games do. All three of those games are fantastic. I highly recommend, like, if you want to just study a fascinating style of game design and essentially a thesis on what role-playing games are about and kind of how to share space with people and how to like treat people at the gaming table, I cannot recommend Dream Askew, Dream Apart enough. It is, I read that and I was like, oh, this is kind of like this is reading the stuff that was already in my head about like how to be respectful of other people, how to kind of make space and how to treat each other well at the gaming table, just already written out for me in book form. It's really, really beautiful.
That's awesome. Oh, did we lose audio on?
I'm still
Did
here.
Okay. I missed the.
I'm still here. I was pausing because I
Yeah.
was like, I have been talking for a hot minute.
Oh no, that was great though. I was glad to get your perspective on that.
Yeah.
I have a brief thing I want to mention at at Big Bad Con. One, it was just fun to get to see everybody. I actually didn't get to play that many games. I always went to I went to a lot of games on demand and played whatever random thing was there, and I didn't take good notes, so that means I don't remember. But I did get to play. So Alex, who played in the short Demigods thing we ran earlier in the year, and has done a few things here and there. More stuff over on Total Party Kiss. This is a great channel to follow. Ran a one-shot of Morkborg, which I had always wanted to try out. And I know plenty of people have experience with it, but it was my first experience with it, and it was memorable in how like dark and gritty it was. I had trouble interfacing with it by myself because I know that I have since found the text version of the book, but the book is a work of art such that I can't read it cover to cover. Like it's very abstract, and my dyslexia just screams of like run away. But the designers have put out a text on like they know that that's an issue, right? Like,
Oh, okay.
It's very.
I didn't know that. I mean, I've seen the book, and it is gorgeous, but it's also like the scribblings of a wild person.
If you buy the digital copy, it comes with the screen reader or like text friendly version, which is very thoughtful. And they also have a character creator online that is just like randomly throw stuff together. And it's quick. It is gritty. It wasn't as deadly as I thought it was going to be, but also Alex was like running a one-shot for us, so like maybe it would have been over time. I think it might fall into some of the fair criticisms, particularly of earlier Powered by the Apocalypse games, is that I don't know that it would stand up to campaign level play. You know, like more than 6, maybe 6 sessions, I think it would run out of vibe.
Right.
You know, it's heavy on vibe. And I think it would start to run out of juice a little bit.
Yeah, my understanding of Morkborg is that it's in kind of a similar play style to things like Trophy, where it is you're going to have short, eventful, miserable campaigns. Miserable for the characters, extremely fun for the players. And it's just like, okay, your characters are not going to last long. They're going to die either gloriously or hideously, maybe both. And then we'll do something else.
I don't know about Trophy, but one thing that I really like about Morkborg is that you can go from 0 to playing in about 10 minutes after you just roll some dice and you run with that. And there's no necessarily even hard and fast rules about what a specific thing means. So it's got like these very thematic names for your powers that you roll up randomly. And, you know, it's just sort of like a consensus. Okay, I'm going to use my crown of teeth on him. What does that mean? I don't know. Let's figure it out.
I love evocative but mysterious descriptions in games. It's so much fun.
I think it's funny that you said like you didn't find it to be deadly, because my experience with it was I rolled up a character. He had 1 hit point.
I did have 4 hit points.
Okay. Oh, I'll see. Oh, look who's living large. But I died in the first combat to a goblin. I think maybe even the first roll. But what happened was, in that random generation, I had rolled up that I had a pet monkey. And so I just started playing the monkey instead. So I just played the monkey.
How many hit points did the monkey have?
Like 6.
That sounds about right.
And the monkey wore the owner's skull as a helmet. Because it's Morkborg, and why not? So Steve the monkey actually survived to a second campaign, to a second session, because I was like, hey,
higher intelligence score.
At this point, I don't remember, but it was super fun. It was super fun to be like, okay, I guess I'm the monkey now.
That's great. I'm so annoyed because I also know I've been to 3 Strategicons this year, and I don't remember what. I know I did play some D&D,
Right.
but that was more memorable in that I went to Adventurers League and was not horrified.
Right. I remember,
Yeah.
like, that's what I remember is your experience was like, I had a good time.
Yeah, but that's like a testament to the people who run it at Strategicon, I think. So who knows? Your mileage may vary. But the other thing I wanted to bring up that I was excited because I saw a bunch of people commenting on it recently is the number of systems, like mainstream systems, that are doing away with the to-hit mechanic, right? So in D&D, you roll to hit, and then you roll to see how much damage you do. And frequently, as we all know, you can have a turn where nothing happens. You miss, oh, I missed all 3 attacks. Next. Oh, everybody saved versus my spell? Okay. Next, nothing happened on my turn. Whoop-de-doo. Boring as fuck. And it's where, Apocalypse World spawned the thought of having, the not entirely binary system. Even on a 2 to 6, you expect something to happen.
Right. Something will happen.
And you might even achieve your goal, God forbid, on a 2 to 6. But, the story moves forward no matter what. And I know a number of games have been doing that, but now a bunch of the stuff that Spencer Stark is working on, he's like working with the Critical Role people and like a bunch of people who are putting out new games, and these games are embracing mechanics. Now, so far, I know that they are crediting some of the other games that have done this before, but, if they're bringing to the masses the idea of getting rid of the two-hit roll, I'm happy about it. And when people experience it, we'll have the opportunity to tell them the mini games that came before, But I just think I'd love to hear everyone's thought on it, because the thing I like about it is, and I've always thought in D&D, like, I would rather just have everybody roll damage and give the bad guy like 20% more HP at the start of the fight, and have the question be, how much damage did you do? Were you able to apply your condition or not, right? Were you trying to apply poison, right? Whatever it is, if it's a combat system that's like that, or if you're trying to convince the person, how well did you convince them, right? Or, like if you're, making an argument in favor of having the guard let you through, is this dangerous to them? Is it hazard? Like, why might they let you through? Versus like just this arbitrary roll of, nope, you whiffed it. Or even the other one that bugs me is like, okay, everybody roll perception, and then and then what?
Yeah, I find that because D&D is such a, it depends who's running it kind of system.
Yeah.
And it depends what that person calls for rules for, and depending on what kind of play culture your table has and what previous play cultures your players have had, your players might want to roll perception all the time to like look for stuff, when like a more experienced GM might have just given them that information.
Right.
Like, oh, I want to roll perception to look for this, when it's like your character, there's no time limit, there's no tension going on right now. Your character could find this thing in a room.
Right. And the story will grind to a halt if they don't.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing of what ended up kind of killing my enjoyment of D&D is outcomes that aren't interesting.
Yeah.
Too many times the outcome of a die roll is not interesting, whether that be you fail to hit, you fail to find a thing, you fail a skill check. Each time it is, unless it's just gonna be, okay, that doesn't happen and we move on to the next person. Like, if you want to make it more interesting than that, the onus is on the GM every time to come up with an interesting complication, or to come up with like kind of from whole cloth a way to make failed die rolls matter in some way. And that I find is a amount of mental overhead that I don't like.
I've played in a lot of groups that will kind of offload that on the players, which is good, because I like hearing like if I'm a GM and I ask a player, okay, that didn't work. What happens? They're almost always going to do something worse than I
Way
would have
worse.
thought of,
Yeah.
which is great. It's a lot more fun and a lot more interesting. But it is, I mean, I certainly agree with you where it's just like the result of a bad roll is, oh, I took some hit point damage.
Right.
But that doesn't tell me anything interesting about what happened. Like, am I going to be limping through the rest of the game because I, twisted my ankle? No, I just lost this number and I can get this number back by rolling this other die some other point. Just in that vein, I really like the idea, and this was new to me because I have often run into that, oh, everyone failed the perception check. What are we going to do? Gumshoe. Gumshoe says that you will find the clue. You will find whatever it is there is, and then you might get something extra if you take certain actions. But you're always going to go like, oh, I found the matchbook for the strip club,
Right.
so I know where my next clue is. But you might find out, oh, it smells like a specific perfume, so now you might know, oh, maybe it belongs to the person who is using that perfume.
I
Quick.
think the invention of like Zippo lighters was such a blow to private investigators across the world. Just like I think Zippo might be in with just like not organized crime, but like crime as a concept.
I required a significant amount of mental energy to untangle. You said the right thing, but my brain heard strip book to the match club,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's not it.
I
Please,
saw them in 95 at Lollapalooza. They were great.
please reverse and fix. Like what? Just screeching halt and the record scratch in my brain. I think chat is also mentioning initiative cycles, which it's this eponymous problem, right? That is in almost every game. I even think Apocalypse World's take on it is inelegant, where it's like, oh, just keep the spotlight moving. Like, okay, and don't let anyone hog the spotlight. Okay,
Can I have a tool on how to do that? Maybe?
right, like be good at it. Like, oh, okay, cool. Like a little guidance there would have been okay. And I'm sure maybe I've missed something that Vince wrote or whatever, but most of the Apocalypse World games since then are, including mine, are fairly nebulous about when you should switch up whose turn it is. And one of the things I really liked about Wild Talents, getting back into that this year, was the way that very quickly everybody says what they're going to do, because just the short version, right, of like, what do you want to do? No elaboration, just like, or do you have a quick clarification? Okay, we're deciding on what dice to roll. Then everybody rolls their dice at the same time, and everybody then determines, okay, the width of the roll goes first and the height of the roll is something separate. And I really admire that about the way that dice engine works. And I think a memorable component of this year for me has been getting back into Wild Talents. And, what warts and all, I'm not going to call it a perfect system because it's far from it, but it's reminded me, it's like reinvigorated the game designer brain, which is just in time because my book's about to ship out and I can finally start working on other things. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah, listening to Pinnacles has been really fun because I shamefully haven't listened to any of the other Wild Talents APs yet. And getting to kind of hear what that system has been like, I think the level of complexity is a bit more than like I as a GM really want to deal with, but like it is that using the dice to determine the order that things play out in is an incredibly elaborate but also incredibly elegant system. It's just really, really clever. Whereas like the main system I've run other than D&D is Masks, and like initiative in Masks is Spotlight. Like there isn't a set initiative system. You just kind of go by feel for like when something else should be happening. I usually like I don't know if this was a good thing, but because I was new to it, I had kind of everybody acts once before another person gets to act again, just because that also helped balance out like my people who knew the system really well and always kind of knew what they wanted to do versus like other people who are newer to the system. Or I had a player who was just very quiet, and the way I would get him to engage with the mechanics is I would go, hey, what are you doing? and then he would quite often come up with really cool things, but it was important that I made sure that I wasn't just letting everyone else kind of run wild and do all of that stuff. So yeah, kind of finding a good balance for initiative things. Coming back around, you were talking about Savage Worlds and their initiative system. I find so I got into Warhammer back in 2016, Warhammer 40,000 specifically, not Age of Sigmar, and that is a war game where you can end up rolling conservatively 40 dice at a time. If you're playing orcs, get ready to roll 120. And so you have to then go through and see, okay, so which of these dice rolled high enough to hit? And then after you deal with your hit, you deal with a to wound roll, and then your opponent rolls a save, and then you start taking models off the table.
Oh boy.
And that is assuming you don't have things that let you re-roll misses or things like that. So a real concern for the length of games is a thing called handling time, which is how long do I have to touch the dice and sort through dice to get to a conclusion? And I find that like initiative systems, so I'm getting ready to, sorry, I'm very scatterbrained, but I'm getting ready to run a game called Stay Frosty, which I'm going to be using to run a all clone trooper action tragedy one shot for game days. I
love it.
ended up doing 2 sessions of it because the first one filled up immediately. And honestly,
where would I go to sign up for that?
Yeah.
Both sessions are full, but I'm probably going to end up running more of these because everyone wants to play it. And I found a system that is light enough.
I'm pretty sure I have access to the back end of that system.
Yep. So yeah, Stay Frosty is a really neat, like OSR inspired, old school Renaissance inspired approach to movies like Aliens and Starship Troopers.
Yeah,
and
it sounded like it might be.
Yeah. It's fun. There are a couple of things that are kind of janky, not quite what I'm looking for. But the big thing I realized I don't like about it is that you roll initiative every round. And I'm like, that I think you have each player roll initiative each round because it's just if they succeed on their dex check. And I think what I might do is I might just roll, and if it's like higher than everybody's dex or like better than everybody's dex, bad guys go first and then good guys. I don't know. It's also a pretty deadly game, so I might just kill all of their clones at once. So we'll see. I might play test a little bit more.
That's interesting.
But that's something that's definitely like handling time and how much time we're spending doing things that aren't particularly narratively satisfying,
Right.
Or even mechanically satisfying, because it's not like you don't roll a really good initiative roll and go, ooh yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, okay, I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit here, and partly I'm showing my age.
have you ever felt good about a nat 20 on initiative in D&D?
Oh, nat 20 does feel bad.
Yeah, because it's like you wasted the
it's
nat 20,
wasted
which
it.
isn't
It was-
how probability works.
No.
It's how it works in
It's
our
how
brains.
fate works.
Right. Yes.
Fate says
correct.
that D20 that 20 was coming up, and that's what it was going to roll no matter what you were rolling for, and that is real and true in science.
Right. Well, but so I'm gonna say, like, I grew up many, many years ago playing D&D, AD&D second edition, all the way through. I've played all the editions, but second edition is what I played the most in sort of my formative years. And we played, because that's what it has in the book, you roll initiative every single turn to see who goes first. And on top of that, there were also rules about the type of weapon you were doing, which would either add or subtract to your initiative as well. So like if you're swinging a battle axe, you're going to be slower than someone who's stabbing with a dagger.
Right.
Sort of thing. So I kind of love that breakdown and granularity. Now, I haven't played any of those recently. I might hate it now. I will fully admit that it's been a long, long time. I probably don't have that kind of patience
There's
the-
some
the-
real system nostalgia goggles.
Yeah,
I still
absolutely.
think of 4th edition fondly. I haven't run a 4th edition combat in probably 8 or 9 years.
4th edition had some things that were worth playing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
plenty that we were happy to leave behind. And that's
Correct.
it was MMO the TTRPG.
Yes.
It was an excellent tabletop tactics game
Yeah.
with some role-playing game elements.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
So I'm actually gonna interrupt here for a moment and see if, because I feel like we've gotten a little far afield.
oh, right.
We've heard what Rose's favorite game.
Yes.
That they're looking forward to on there. How about you, Jason? Did you feel like your D&D story was it?
Yeah,
or-
well, I think my most memorable was probably the Morkborg situation, and then the non-specifically, but getting rid of the 2-hit. That whole conversation
Gotcha.
in the last couple months has been really exciting to me as a game designer. I just like following that whole process and thought. So that's probably my big thing for the year.
Okay. So that leaves me. And to be honest, I haven't played a lot of real different games this year. I've also gone to a couple of Strategicons. One, I ran a game, which I guess went okay, but I felt a little bad that I didn't have very many people sign up, so I just had two guys show up. And it was fine, but I'd prepared this big thing, and I was really looking forward to.
Was it Phil and Ed?
Yes.
Love you guys.
Yeah. And I'll say they're great. I had a good time, but I had just been hoping to have like my debut have more people. in
Yeah.
it, that's all.
What game was it?
It was it was the first version of the Savage Worlds Oz game.
Oh, right.
And
yeah.
it had elements that I was taking from that to use in the campaign later, which didn't work out for various reasons that are neither here nor there. But what I've actually been playing a lot of on the regular is Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Oh, okay.
I've been playing a lot of that this year. We finished up one campaign. We started a new campaign. The thing that is really, I find kind of interesting about this current campaign that I'm in is we're a street gang. And so there's all the game master created these, or sort of readjusted the elements from their Kingmaker system where you can kind of influence other things in order to, promote whoever you're going for the king, I assume. But to make it into like kind of we're trying to control neighborhoods in the city as well as going out and being adventurers. So there are certain things that we can do, certain roles to be like, okay, I'm going to establish a warehouse in this area so that we have a base of operations for our continued criminal enterprise.
You mean legitimate import?
I'm
export
sorry.
business?
Yes, of course. Legitimate businessmen all over the place. So I've been really enjoying that. I have been enjoying the Pathfinder system a lot too. I'm not a super fanboy the way I feel like a lot of people are about, oh my God, it's the best thing I've ever played. And, if you're playing D&D, you're a noob and whatever and all that sort of stuff. But there is it evokes a certain emotion that like number goes up.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat to be like, yes, I'm 3rd level and I'm rolling plus 10 on this die. Even though that doesn't matter at all because it's the exact same as if you were rolling, plus 3
Yeah.
in another system. But it feels like, oh, I got this big number.
Sure.
It's the old you are not immune to propaganda, but it's you're not immune to the Skinner box effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly like that. Although I will say in what you're saying, we don't use a dynamic initiative like we were talking about before. We roll once and that's it. But it's the sort of game that I hope none of my other friends who play in that game are listening right now. But I actually have a game of Civilization 6 running in the background so that after I do my turn, I'm listening and I'm paying attention and I'll flip back over if someone says, oh, I go here and something happens.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm playing an entirely separate game while I'm waiting for my turn to come back around.
Yeah, that's rough. And that can be, like, I'm sure you manage that very well, but in a lot of cases, if it's your friends are like, looking at Twitter or whatever else, like they're not plugged into what is happening in the combat. And then their turn takes longer because they have to catch up and be like, oh, you're over there. I thought you said you were over, because they weren't really paying attention. I know that you can multitask, but I think about that a lot. When there is a long initiative order, that it's just sort of an inherent problem. And like, I don't even know how to solve that. That's wild to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a Pathfinder 1E game that I played Mark of the Ninja in between my turns.
You mean D&D 3.75?
Correct.
Well, should we move on to an email?
I think we should move on to an email.
Okay.
Who would like the first email?
We might want to split this one. It is substantial.
It is okay. It is quite big.
Yeah.
I just realized it is
and
2.5 pages.
I meant to say it is. We are grateful to Thomas from Denmark for this email. Just heads up, but
actually, we do like long emails. We love the content. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm not being sarcastic, but it's awesome. But just so we know.
Well, why don't you get started, and then I'll hop in. And Rose, you have a copy of this?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Great. Dear Mistress Kimmy, the herder of cats and planner of plans. I can be one of those cats.
I think we're all one of those cats.
Yep. When I, in a previous email, discussed running a teenage after-school game club, Kimmy, and I think Jason, probably, this sounds familiar to me, mentioned that they would love to hear more about the why and how it works. So here goes. Besides the very personal fun I get from running TTRPGs for teenagers, my years of experiences have taught me that there are a whole slew of benefits for the younglings as well. First are having fun and camaraderie. It is a great hobby, and when teenagers have fun doing something, there are at least the hope that they do not get bored and then tempted by other, let us say, frowned upon activities. Yes, keeping them out of trouble. Absolutely. However, there are also many things which I, a professional educator, find that the youngsters learn and take with them. Feel free to discuss and comment each one along the way. Yeah, I imagine we will. There are several. So one, how to act in social groups. There is a higher than average representation among the teens I might in the after school, I might see in the after school gaming activities of young people that struggle with being part of social groups. Yeah.
Yo soy.
Some have anxiety, others
Check.
are lonely and or very shy.
Check.
More than a few have neurodivergences. Check.
Hey, yo.
And some are more or less intentionally geeky and weird, said in the most loving way. Double check.
Yeah, most of the time.
Hi, have we met?
Meeting other teenagers and having something to do together give these kids a safe space to get some social XP and a place to practice and evolve their own social skills. I've always been a proponent of this idea, personally. So we're in the comment phase now.
Absolutely.
The idea that D&D nerds, there's TTRPG nerds, are these antisocial, goblins in the basement is, propagated by people who didn't understand what we were doing.
Right.
It is an intensely social activity. And friendships have been born and burned in these activities. And
Can confirm.
yeah, and it is it's intense sometimes. So I don't know. Any other thoughts on the self-selection groups of this?
Yeah. It's things that are common for the listed groups that enjoy that are overrepresented in tabletop communities is we're a lot of people who spend a lot of time like daydreaming and thinking about creative things and coming up with worlds and characters and stuff like that. There's a reason why a thing that's powered by imagination would appeal to us.
Yeah.
Well, and I always found that it's great to be able to take those daydreams or imagination and share them with someone else.
Yeah.
And kind of
yes.
create a greater world because you get other input. You get people who aren't your thoughts contributing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I think about it, is GMing just a very specialized form of info dumping?
I don't see how it's not.
Yeah, like here, not only am I going to talk to you about the thing that I'm super interested for a long time, but it's a thing that I made up. So let me tell you about how my elves are different.
Yeah, I think that's actually where we get into a lot of great conversations about making sure you understand the difference between GMing and writing a novel.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
and like that is a delicate thing that a number of us who are neurodivergent have to make sure that we're balancing that.
Honestly, I think there's plenty of people who are neurotypical who still are novel writers and lose sight of that.
Absolutely. I can only speak from my point of view, and something that I had to make sure early on that I wasn't just like, okay, here are your railroads, just follow along these tracks and everything will be fine.
No,
Yeah.
you can't kill the vizier. Not in this chapter.
Yeah.
Follow the railroad and nobody gets hurt.
Oh, the vizier's not actually dead.
Here's the vizier's twin brother who knows all the same information.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, with a puff of smoke, he disappeared.
Yeah, got him.
No body, no crime.
Should we move on to number 2?
Yeah, I think we got that covered.
How to handle adversity. It is not because I deliberately set the players up to lose. Okay, that might also happen, but only with greatest deliberation and care. Yes, that's fair. That's my commentary. Sorry, I should be more. I'll do my commentary and content the accent. It is.
Oh, is that like italics? This is italics for Jason?
Yes. Just generic Euro trash. Sorry, putting my arm around Rose again.
I'm not complaining.
This is how I sit at home. I frequently just like spread out because I have room. And okay, it is more the fact that when playing games, board games and TTRPGs, there is always an element of luck and or skill. Yeah, hopefully it's a combination of those things. Dice are not the most loyal of friends and do occasionally betray your dreams and plans. And in many games, there are both winners and losers. Being able to handle both loss and victory or just plain luck or the lack thereof is a great skill on many other of life's domains. For example, I currently have an older teenager in the after-school club that a few years ago was able to combine being both the worst winner and loser at the same time.
Jeez.
We are talking about a kid who would be angry if he felt he didn't win big enough. Ooh, yeah. Nowadays, after some guidance, he is the most inclusive and kindest player, and oh so great at teaching younger and newer players new games. Yeah, I mean, that's such a valuable lesson.
I have a... There's a person I used to game with who was very much like that whether they were winning or losing, they were not fun to be with.
Yeah.
And it was rough. And it's nice when, I love hearing that someone overcame that and became like...
Well, when it's a teenager,
yeah,
I hope they have some room to grow.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a former coach, like one of my favorite aspects of working with kids was teaching them how to people. And it's just like, that is not how we treat other people. That's not acceptable behavior. Let's work on that. I understand that you're upset, but you can't go and do that to other people.
Right.
Yeah. I think probably what Thomas is doing here to such success is teaching them that the point of the game, right, is not to win, right? It's to tell a story together. And if we can tell a compelling story, we are all winning, right? And it's not, you don't even win when you do the most damage or kill the bad guy and you did half of the damage all by yourself, that you didn't win that fight. The fight's just over now.
Right.
You win by having the best story.
Yeah. And
like
so
the thing that's remembered, that you tell to your friends, that you tell the people on the street who are like, "Oh, how was your day?" Well,
yeah.
I had a character whose name was my favorite character of all time. It was D&D character. His name was John Baldfoot. He was a human rager who was raised by halflings. Hence the name.
And he had no
Baldfoot.
hair on his feet.
Right, exactly. He was an orphan raised by halflings.
Yeah.
Baldfoot was what they called him.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you a single thing that he did that was fantastic and amazing and did a bunch of damage or anything like that. But I can absolutely tell you how he died, which was just the most incredible thing that happened, and it delights me every time.
Is it? Can you?
Oh,
does it
sure.
take a long
I
time
mean,
to
it's
tell?
totally simple. He was eaten by a bullet.
Oh, a boulette?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
boulet.
Okay.
A boulet.
Well,
I
the
was
two
nuts
T's.
for-
I think the two
yeah.
T's gives you the hard T. But I was just thinking, like, a bullet from a gun ate him. Like,
Yes, it was a Mario. We fell into Mario World.
That's why
and
we don't have
Bulletville.
firearms in D&D. Yeah.
No, but see, like that was one of those things where I don't remember how many orcs he killed. I don't remember how much damage he did, but I remember the great story of him falling out of a tree into the open mouth of this creature
That's great.
and being like, well, that sucked.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, I'll read one more of these.
Okay.
Actually learning skills from the more classic curriculum. Yes. I find that the kids that play TTRPGs learn a lot of skills that are directly transferable to their more ordinary school life. Basic math, thanks to all the nice math rocks that we use for in games. Yes, thank you, Shadowrun First Edition, that I did all by pencil and paper.
Woof.
Yeah, a bit of history, mostly for board games, strong historical themes, but also a tiny bit from role-playing games. Reading, I mean, it is rare to find other groups of teens that happily read books about rules in strange settings. English, which is taught in Denmark from the earliest school years and is suddenly is something that teenagers actually have a very direct need for, besides the somewhat low-level English/American they meet on social media. Skill acquisition. And any thoughts on that?
You learn stuff from games. It's fun.
I'm not sure which would be more like what the chicken and the egg is for myself personally, because as long as I can remember, I've loved to read. And that kind of just naturally, I feel, flowed into RPGs. Because A, it was brand new books and brand new systems and brand new things to learn about. And I would say that I have read more RPGs than I've played RPGs, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Different types of systems. But I don't know whether one contributed to the other or not. I mean, I certainly was reading before I was playing RPGs, but I don't know how much they reinforced each other.
Yeah.
But all of the things like doing bits of math, not being afraid to sketch something out, or, ye old graph paper, tracking your dungeons and hoping you got that right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rose, any thoughts on that?
No, it's pretty awesome. I now am thinking about using role-playing games to learn a second language would be entertaining. I know Inspire Isles has their ASL role-playing game,
true.
and that is very relevant to me. I have a lot of people in my life who either have hearing loss or are in the process of losing their hearing. So that would be super cool. Just my brain is rattling with ideas at the moment.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention, not exactly skill learning, and also chat is mentioning that like empathy and multi-step thing, like all those sorts of things are interesting. But for me also, it was the skill of being bisexual. like being able to.
So what you're saying is, for the straight people in the audience,
Yeah.
skill issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Get
it was
good.
a long time before I could identify that about myself. And there were, as the GM, I was the girlfriend NPC. I was the boyfriend NPC. I was like, I had to play everything. Pretty soon, whenever I sat down to play a game, I always played a girl character. And to their credit, one of my best friends in the whole world, Sam DeLev, sat me down after a game one time, the kindest, most gentle way, because they had come out as non-binary and was something we had some conversations about because I wanted to understand. And, just in their observation of me, just said, have you ever had any thoughts about your gender? Right? Do you think that could be part of what's going on here? And it ended up not being, but that was a huge doorway for me of like, just being invited to think about that. And there would have been no way to approach that context the way my brain was wired at the time. But then to also find this middle ground of like, oh yeah, I'm not, my gender isn't the issue. My fluid sexuality is, right? And so that was like, I can't, like, calling it a skill is a weird thing to call it, but like,
Oh yeah, like I also was in the process of figuring out. So spoiler alert to the audience. I am trans.
okay.
And I was in the process of running the Masks game that Jason was in, while figuring out that I was trans. And yeah, playing female NPCs. I never really had the guts to play a woman as a character. For the same reason that like I was super vigilant about not coming across as femme, because I knew that there was something going on in here and I needed no one to figure that out before I was ready for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's role-playing games are a wonderful way to figure things out about yourself. Like I not only in a game I didn't even play in, Hexbreakers is the game that Riley ran.
Yeah.
Is the game that no, that wasn't, no, sorry, Riley didn't run that one. That was
No, she was in it.
Emily
ran that one. Yeah.
Sorry, my apologies. The game that Emily ran was the thing that kicked me in the butt to finally figure out what my name was. So like, not games you're not even in can help you figure out things about yourself. It's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Some of that, like I knew some of that ahead of time before, like I'm going to use this show as sort of my watershed moment, but this show and playing on it and talking to people offline is how I realized the neurodivergence that explained like a lot about my life. Once someone, I had a similar situation, someone was like, hey, have you ever thought that maybe XYZ? And I was like, and then we talked some more and I was like, oh, I see.
Yeah.
I remember going down the list of like some of the neurodivergent descriptions, like, but not all of these apply to me.
Right.
And they're like, welcome.
Yeah. The fact that you had to point out the
Yeah.
three
I was
that
like,
don't.
number 13 and number 17 don't apply, so this probably doesn't fit. Like, okay,
The
but
most neurodivergent thing is trying to find problems with the test
Yeah.
on whether you're neurodivergent or
Yeah.
not.
yeah.
Oh, the truth.
Okay, Nick, do you want to take number 4?
Absolutely. I'll start up here. Number 4, creativity. I'm currently studying for a master's in creative learning, and it is mostly about why creativity is such a strong force in both learning, other subjects, and itself. While there are many ways to bring creativity into classrooms, I have never found a better space for teenagers to be creative and learn to be even more creative in collaboration with others than our game club. If they're able to bring just a small fraction of that creativity with them into more ordinary school activities and later in life, they're on a very good path indeed. I certainly feel like that is true. There's stuff that has happened in games or in research that I've done for games that I have used in my regular life that sometimes I just repeat in my head as I do them, like accelerate out of a turn.
Sure.
But also just being able to like look at things and see them in a different way, like using things that aren't necessarily the right thing for a purpose, but that will work for what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that games have certainly taught me to look at outside the box that way.
Yeah.
I'll flip it around and say, like with my ADHD and I've always struggled with writing, but I am constantly overflowing with ideas. Like I in an email I sent in that hasn't made it onto the podcast yet, I refer to my ADHD as, or as the doctors say, my head is full of bees.
Killer bees.
Yep. And so I will get in these just kind of like not quite like diagnosable manic things, but I will just kind of get in this creative cycle where I'm coming up with ideas, much like happened with Evangelion and Mecha. I just have these ideas stuck in my head, and role-playing games are the best outlet for that for me. It is something that lets me take all of these ideas and in my opinion, like I could write something or make a video or do all of these things to kind of put ideas out to a passive audience, but by being able to filter them through role-playing games, I am able to like tailor make them for my audience, and not only that, but get active feedback as I go and kind of make these ideas into the best versions of themselves, the things that are most just precision designed for the people at the table, in really wonderful ways. Because I could write a comic book, or I could, you know, come up with a script for an animated series, or try to act in a film, but I can instead create these things I can create an even better product, but for a much smaller audience, and then just have these incredible memories to take with me. I find that incredibly rewarding, and incredibly satisfying as a creative outlet.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, Jason and I are nodding in agreement through much of this.
Yeah.
It just doesn't translate very well in the
I
medium.
can't say it any better
Assume
than that.
anytime I'm talking, they're both doing that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I make it a habit to not disagree with Rose because I
Right.
fucking know better.
absolutely, it was a hard learned lesson during the lockdown in our masks campaign.
That was great fun.
All right, so how do we do it? There is a Danish saying that translates roughly to, "Isn't magic just dexterity?" Meaning that it might look like magic, but it is just a matter of training. Therefore, here are some of my tricks of the trade. 1. Trust the force, or more precisely, trust the teens. Have the strength to give responsibility and freedom to the kids, not all at once or at all times, unless you want to create a Lord of the Flies social experiment in a way. But in well-measured and increasingly larger portions. Teach them how to teach others how to play both TTRPGs and board games. Involve them in planning and some of the boring logistics. Support and guide those who would like to run games. How to do that, you might ask? Currently, there are 3 TTRPG campaigns running in the same club, all run by teenagers in the role of game masters. I help with their Session 0, give guidance on things small and large, and have a character in every party, so that I can sit in and play along with all the groups when there's need or time. 2, focus on fun, not winning. To touch on what we talked about earlier. Talk about the noble art of enjoying failures. Laugh at your own fails and mistakes. Make sure that when the teens eventually fail a critical role in a TTRPG, that 1, they are reminded that it is the character that failed, not the player. And 2, that there is put a great spin on the situation so that it's turned into something fun that can be embraced as a great gaming story.
I've like streamlined this process a little bit by I just don't make mistakes. So like it's a little bit of a trick to learn.
Right.
But I've gotten pretty good at that. So
Yeah. Once you get perfection, I mean, the rest just falls into place.
Yeah. So I would recommend just do it right. And there's no issue really. End of podcast.
All right. Well, good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us for episode. Rules are okay. Fun is king. I have never let rules in a TTRPG stand in the way of fun. Making games more accessible by not using all the rules, or even changing them for something is a bit more simple, or even changing them for something a bit more simple is a core advice to all that plays TTRPGs with kids and teens. I often compare it with a schoolyard soccer, where it is possible to have fun playing soccer without following anything but the most core concept of the game and rules. I mean, there probably isn't the correct number of players, and the field is most likely way too small, the goal's not the size, etc. And when the teens gain some experience and start reading the rules, it is a great time to talk to them about how and why you have changed some rules, and foster some critical thinking on their behalf on which rules they think should be used, changed, or dumped.
Yeah, I mean, way to just like put a trumpet up to the side of my brain. Like everything I want to say about managing the rules in play is there. I'm unapologetically a modifier of rules. Like,
Famously so.
yeah, that's,
Even your own
Notoriously
rules.
so.
yeah, I think it's the right thing to do to mod any system to fit the moment or fit your group, right? Like, I think it's a crime to play, like, to rigidly play rules as written in the face of a need, right? Like when something isn't working.
Right.
That is true. I will also flip it around and say that for certain people with certain psychological profiles, having the rules be as they are, be played as written, is how they have their fun. So
Yes,
I
but you have
know
to
that-
communicate. That's what I mean. It's like
Yes,
if you're
yes.
going to change something, everyone has to be on board. And they have
Yes.
to know why, and they have to know when, and not be willy nilly. And yes, absolutely agree with
And
that.
I know that because we like to get rid of attack rolls, and because we have dyed hair and pronouns, people think that we're hippie gamers. I think it's important that we do recognize that sometimes rules as written crunchy games are how some people like to have their fun, and that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. As long as everyone at the table is happy doing that. You just, but that's another skill of learning to mediate and diplomacize, I think is the word I wanted. To be able to have that conversation of like, hey, we're doing it this way. What if next time we tried it that way? Like that's a useful skill to be able to say. But like, there are so many things to be aware of. If you're going to change something, it requires a level of skill. Like we were playing D&D and Theater of the Mind, and we're like, oh yeah, we don't need maps. Like all of us were used to other types of games. Like, yeah, let's not worry about maps and minis and whatever. And I decided to play a monk. Like half of my kit is I go fast.
Right.
Like
I can cover more ground.
right.
I
Like
can-
how far away are they? Oh, don't worry about it. Like it matters. Like I need to make a different character, So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Sorry about the long mail. It is a subject which I love to talk about, and I could go on for hours and pages. I will stop now and hope that these few thoughts and insights might inspire others to take up gaming with younglings.
Oh, please never apologize for that.
Right. No, we hate talking about this sort of a topic for hours and hours on end. That's why we spend our Friday nights driving into the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a rough commute for me this
Yeah.
this week.
Okay, Rose.
Got to be honest. Just being beamed in here, really, really difficult. But I make that sacrifice for you, the viewers.
Well,
just for you.
I'm just amazed that the quality from the satellite is so good.
Yeah, actually, it is really fun just that we have this level of.
Have we mentioned that this is the first live podcast from the International Space Station?
No, we probably should have. We probably should have.
Yeah.
I think we had the lead there.
That's fair. That's fair. After all, we are very humble here at Happy Jacks.
I'm the most humble. Excuse me.
Yes. Best regards, Spillmeister Thomas from Denmark. P.S. Skull.
Skull.
We don't have drinks, so pretend if you're listening to this that we just had something. PPS, yes, the old PP joke.
Yep.
And PPPS, never let the teenagers hear the PP joke. They don't know what a PPS is, but will find it very funny that you said PP again.
Yes. It's true. I have to say, my 8th grade elective is all about like space exploration projects and stuff. And they all got to, there happened to be exactly 8 of them this semester. And so they all picked a planet from our solar system. They picked, let's see, they didn't pick Earth. I forget what there was another option they had to pick. But Uranus was on the list. And they went with it. And I put it up on the board. I said, look, I understand. Let's just get it all out of the way now. And we'll get through it, right?
Yeah.
And they did for the most part, except for the funniest moment in my 18 years of teaching. This is a little bit of a blue story, but
On
So
Happy
young
Jacks?
viewers cover your ears.
one of my 8th graders who the boy who got Uranus to do a report on was like, okay, time to do.
I'm sorry, I'm not normally affected by this, Shaft and Taint and all
Yeah.
that stuff, but it was just too much of the boy who got Uranus.
Yeah, the boy who's going to do a report on Uranus. Was and we also discussed
Sample
like
Scar.
yeah, we also talked about like Uranus is not better.
Right.
It just sounds like urine. I came up with Uranus,
Which actually technically is the correct pronunciation.
oh, okay. Well,
But
nobody says it that way, and I'd be
Right.
looked at weird if I tried. But this boy was like, okay, time to start my research. And I just hear this, oh God, from the back of the room. He typed in YOUR
No.
ANUS.
no.
And guess what showed up on his perfectly legitimate Google search? A sea of stars.
Yes. Homer Simpson fading into a bush.gif.
I have not laughed so hard. I lost my composure a little bit. I was very amused. He was grossed out and like was trying to close the tab without looking at it. Because nobody wants to see a bunch of butts you didn't go looking for.
See,
you know?
that's
like,
why you learn shortcuts. Control W.
Yeah, yeah. And I was just like, we were all laughing, and he was the kind of kid like, I knew it was okay that we were laughing because he could hold up to that and was laughing as well, but also dying, you know. Because there was also a split second where he was like, "Oh God," and I was like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "Nothing." Like trying to get out of this moment somehow, screaming, "Nothing is wrong."
I'm gonna have to use someone screaming "nothing is wrong" in a game someday.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
Sorry. That was one of the most memorable gaming moments of my year.
Nice. Okay, Jason, I gotta know. How many times did you tell the story before you settled on a sea of stars as what he found?
Oh, that's the first time I've said it that way.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it, actually.
No.
I hate to admit this. I think Jason's funnier than I am.
Just right off the top. I was pretty happy with that. Rose, everyone knows I'm the funny one.
Oh, that's true. I'm the hot one now.
Yeah, obviously. No one calls me that.
Oh, God.
So, anyway, Uranus.
Indeed.
Rose, do you want to
Indeed.
read Mailbag 2?
You could say he was a bit starstruck. I got email too. It's from Verk. Ooh, this is
We are
the
serious
very
adults here.
mature. Yep.
Oh,
I was
no.
actually like listening to this email. I was like, oh, I'm gonna share this episode because it's gonna be really useful for like people to learn about running programs for kids. And I'm still gonna do that.
But clipping.
But I'm
Sorry.
gonna have some
I ruined
caveats
it.
on who I send it to.
I ruined it.
Oh
Sorry.
no, you improved it, but you did narrow the audience a bit. Okay, here we go. And scene. All right. Greetings, Empress Kimmy and her Jacker court. In my home game recently, my players decided on a course of action that made no sense to the fiction of the world. So I had some NPC try to explain how their idea wouldn't work. But instead of understanding that, they doubled down even more convinced of their choice. Now, I understand this was partially my fault. I purposefully made this problem hard. This campaign is almost over, and I wanted this to be a big moral choice. So I think they felt backed into a corner, and this was the idea they grabbed onto and wouldn't think outside the box. I didn't give a lot of details in this because the details don't really matter. My question is, at what point do you just let dumb ideas work? Even when they don't make sense. Even when the whole campaign is telling you it won't work. My personal belief is that it depends on the campaign. If I am playing a gonzo game, my answer is always yes. But in a 30-plus session campaign about killing a warlock Dracula in service to freaking Cthulhu, am I still supposed to say yes?
Mhm.
Verk from DC.
That's a good
Uh,
question.
PS drink. PSS, which is not how that works. What was the dumbest
Script.
idea your players ever came up with that you let happen? We'll come to that later.
Hmm.
Okay, so God, 30 sessions of campaign to come around to a ridiculous way to kill Warlock Dracula serving Cthulhu. I would talk to the players and explain that it's kind of a ridiculous thing that kind of breaks the fiction.
Yeah. Is the group like? Do you have X card as part of the
I was going to bring that
table?
up too. Yeah.
Or script change.
Yeah, but X card is kind of the most common thing that people might have, and so I don't know Verk's table, but I do know Verk, and I know Verk uses X card, like it's familiar with safety tools. But you know, sometimes all of us have been in a situation with our friends where you're like, we don't need safety tools. They're like, okay, I'm just gonna say stuff then. Yeah, it's so to understand. Trying to make sure I totally understand the question here.
So basically, they came up with a way, like their plan to beat Warlock Dracula who serves Cthulhu, which, to be fair, already sounds like a little bit of a ridiculous premise, but I'll go with it. We'll say this is a serious campaign for the sake of argument. They came up with a ridiculous solution for that, and he tried to warn them off of this course of action by talking to them in character about it.
Okay.
Like having an NPC say, hey, that won't work. And then they doubled down.
Yeah.
You know,
So
damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
What if we just got a bigger air fryer?
Sure. So, okay. So I think this is where I might... so I empathize with the problem in the sense that I tell my players, I will never lie to you, but the NPCs might. Right?
Oh, so that wouldn't work for you.
Right. And in which case, I would go to the X card situation of like, gang, this is not in tone. We've been playing this dark and gritty game this whole time, and you all wanting to drop a dump truck on him isn't working for me. You know, like I try to give it to you in character, but I need to just hit pause and tell you all like that ain't it. Right? Like that's wild. And you gotta come up with something else. Like please come up with something else is another way to say that I would be like, if you want to make that the end of this 30 session arc, okay, but is that how you want to end this? Like, is there anything else we could do? I'm begging you. It's your GM.
Yeah, that's the trouble I have with D&D, because D&D doesn't have an established tone as part of anything really, because even Strahd has ended up as a Scooby-Doo episode more than once.
Sure.
In fact, I would say ends up as a Scooby-Doo episode more often than not.
Yeah.
So I find I specifically recognize that as a challenge, because D&D, even like if you're trying to play it seriously, sometimes mechanically gets a little bit slapstick.
Yeah.
Like when you had someone get hold person on them and then just died, you know, a very I am no mere hedge mage scenario.
Yeah.
So that is difficult. I would, it's a difficult thing where you could go kind of two different ways with this. You could either take the action to protect the tone of your game, which as a GM is entirely within your prerogative to do so. Like you can say, hey, I know you guys want to do this, but it kind of breaks what I've been trying to make happen with this campaign, which is totally fair. Or you can just say, fuck it, we ball, and let them drop the dump truck on top of Dracula. Like, I will say dropping the dump truck on top of Dracula will probably be a story they tell more often than the gritty, serious conclusion you had in mind. But also, like, it is important that you recognize that as a GM, you are also a player. You also put a lot of work into running this campaign, and having being able to speak up for what you desire out of your game is also important.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what would you allow from your players? It'd be like, well, it depends what I wanted out of this game. Like if at the end of our Masks campaign, y'all decided to get real silly with it, I probably would have vetoed that. I would be like, hey, we've spent a year in lockdown with these characters. We've developed real world friendships and relationships through this game. I don't want to undercut that with getting silly.
I mean, I'm not friends with anyone from that game, but just
not at all. Not at all. It's not like we're occasionally on a podcast together or anything.
No, you don't know what Kimmy and I had to do to get the two of them on the podcast.
The negotiations that happen backstage.
Modifications to my rider are extensive.
The bonus you made off of this just to work with me. I now am thinking of Jason as like Hulk Hogan backstage politicking.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't work for me, brother.
Yeah. Pretty accurate. That's what I'm like in general.
Yep, absolutely.
But
But yeah, it really comes down to what you wanted out of this campaign, and how you think your players are gonna react to it. Like, I think I'm always a little bit cautious of like D&D groups, if that's kind of like the main system people have experience with. I find that the general approach to D&D is a less collaborative thing from players, and they find meddling with their choices kind of blasphemous, because in D&D the only thing you have true sovereignty over is your actions as a character. You don't get that storyline control. You don't get to narrate your scenes really as a part of the mechanics. So having the GM and say, hey, the thing you decided on as characters doesn't fly, can rankle people. So that's something to be cautious of. But if they're people who have played other systems and are used to sharing narrative and are familiar with things like having an established tone for a campaign and like working within that, I think you could come to them and, I mean, if nothing else, you could just say, hey, this is a problem I'm having.
Yeah.
And how I'm feeling about it, and kind of go from there.
Yeah. And you can even like break the fourth wall a little bit and be like, look, I tried to express it through the NPC telling you this, and then it just turned up to 11. Like, I don't know how to tell you guys this. Like, this is super weird for me and I can't wrap my head around it. Like, yeah, I like the way you said that. That's really good.
Thank you. As we've established, I am always right.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would help, but I part of me is thinking, would it be helpful to say something like, okay, would Dirk Johnson, bare-knuckled private eye, really think that the solution to this Dracula Cthulhu problem is a giant air fryer and breading and a banana cream pie? Like,
Sure.
That just doesn't make sense for the fiction of the character.
Yeah, maybe bring it back to the specific characters.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think that might help and kind of ground it in whatever reality you've established, ground it back in those characters. That it doesn't make sense that it would suddenly go from, True Detective to Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
In the face of essentially one episode is what this sounds like.
Yeah. For me, though, that still runs the risk of like them saying, yep, I've decided that's what he would do. Like, because the real issue is like Verk's feeling about the end of the game.
Right.
And like wanting it to be fun for him too. And so that's, to me, the only out I can see there is the unfortunate grown-up conversation of
no,
I don't wanna.
This is gonna be not fun for me. Is there can we negotiate on this? I tried it with the NPC. It didn't hit. This is not how I meant. Like, I don't understand what's happening here. How did we get to this point? I want to have a really cool ending, and this seems wild. So how did we get here? Help me connect the dots. And maybe the group can explain their logic better, and they think they have to not explain it to him because he'll cheat or something. Like I know Verk and I know he wouldn't, but if they're thinking this is we have to beat the DM at his own game and something like that, then that's complicated. That's really hard to fit into a conversation.
Yeah. Not to fully psychoanalyze the players on this, but he mentioned that he was trying to make a big moral conundrum for them and kind of like, and he mentioned possibly them feeling backed into a corner. That is another big thing. It's it kind of makes me think of there's a fantastic meme going around right now, which is Ponytail Guy, which is like, would you rather have economic stability or like trans rights? And he's like,
both.
Like I like, he's like, you can't choose both. And he's like, then I reject the question. You can't reject the question. He's like, too bad.
Yeah.
Which is just like absolute like hero behavior. Love that guy.
Yeah.
One of my favorite people on the internet right now. And it's just like, yeah, when you give the players like especially moral conundrums and like hard choices like that, sometimes you got to be prepared for when they go, I don't want to make that choice. I'm going to go for the third option. And sometimes the third option is the air fryer to defeat Dracula. And if you have, like, if you've wrapped that moral conundrum a bit too tight, like, player comfortability can break. And they will go for something that breaks the fiction in order to not choose one of those objectionable outcomes.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yep.
So that's something, and we've established this many a time, that we can't answer every email with have an adult conversation because we wouldn't have a show anymore.
Right. Well,
But
and
like,
and that's a really good way to put that, though. Like, if they really do feel backed into a corner, then maybe they felt like like that both option wasn't there, and that's a really good way. I'm sitting here thinking like, oh man, these players just ruined the GM's day.
Right.
And I'm
but
like,
to flip
oh, right. I have been in the opposite situation where the GM let us wander off in the wrong distance for like 4 or 5 game sessions of going in the wrong direction because we didn't figure out the one right solution to his fucking riddle. And like the riddle he wrote.
Right.
Like that was, I was not super into that story at that point when he was like, ha ha ha, you idiots, you did it all wrong. I'm like, cool, see you next week.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna float a solution here though that I think bridges all of the issues.